The New York Times is coming under fire after printing a Sunday crossword puzzle that some say resembles the shape of a swastika. The puzzle raising eyebrows on social media. Take a look at the screen. From people across the political landscape, everyone from Donald Trump Jr. to Democratic strategist Keith Edwards have weighed in on this. In a statement to Newsweek, Times officials said the only design intent was its symmetry with even-lengthed words. It's also not the first time the Times has had to come out and say a puzzle was not a swastika. Something just like this happened back in 2017. Joining me right now is Ian Samuel, a former law professor and former clerk for Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. First of all, Ian, even if it was an accident, which, I mean, clearly it's an accident, would it be wise for the Times to issue an apology at this point?
Well, I mean, look, 'tis the season, I suppose, and I have to admit that I didn't totally see it. I'm more of a Wordle guy, you sort of avoid these problems. But if they actually have the sense that some of their readership is genuinely offended, then sure, as a matter of good business, why not issue an apology? There are a lot of obviously Jewish people who read the New York Times, and a lot of people who aren't Jewish, who just aren't Nazis, right? I consider myself one of those people. But if, on the other hand, they get the sense that what's going on here is people like, for example, Donald Trump Jr. do not genuinely think that, the Sulzberger family who's owned the newspaper for like 100 years is secretly activating their Nazi super soldiers with the crossword puzzle or something. If they think that what's really going on here is what you might call concern trolling, right? Like people just sort of don't like the New York Times anyway, having a laugh at the kind of mistake the New York Times might take somebody else to task for making, then I wouldn't feed the trolls. And also, look, it's a slow time of year, right? This is the kind of time of year when everyone's sort of looking for some kind of content to post about. Best not to feed those flames. And just maybe next time, just have some kind of policy that we're not going to explain a swastika 3 times in the crossword puzzle. So, I like symmetry too, but maybe just a blanket ban on this particular, ancient symbol.
Yeah, clearly there are a lot of people who had something to say about this, but and the Trump family has a longstanding feud with the paper. But Donald Trump Jr. said something a lot of people are probably agreeing with, pointing to a potential double standard. He's quoted as saying, "Imagine what they would do to someone who did this and was not ideologically aligned with them. I'll give them the same benefit of the doubt they would give those people." Exactly 0. So do you agree that they're getting a pass on this one?
Well, they're clearly not getting a pass, right? We're sitting here talking about it. What I don't quite understand, though, is what Trump Jr.'s point is, right? So, for example, his father just had dinner with Nick Fuentes and Kanye West, who I guess are fresh off of their crossword puzzle designing careers, to have dinner with the former president. And Nick Fuentes is the guy who's actually an anti-Semite, right? He thinks, the Holocaust didn't happen, which is too bad, right? We're talking about that kind of guy. Now, I don't know if there's like a problem with benefit of the doubt when people are criticizing people like Nick Fuentes or Kanye West, people like that, or if the problem is that, these kinds of anti-Jewish opinions that people like Fuentes and West hold are actually becoming more acceptable in certain corners of the United States, which of course would be a problem, right? It's not super clear to me what Trump Jr. means when he thinks that like the people the New York Times are criticizing, like Fuentes or whoever else, should get like the benefit of the doubt, right? Because it's not clear to me what that benefit would yield in those cases. Now, of course, it's completely true, 100% true, that the New York Times, like every other institution, especially mainstream liberal institutions, has taken plenty of people to task for essentially unintentional or, technical foot faults, right, which you might call it, since we're just fresh off of soccer. And if that's what people are going on about, and they're having a sort of laugh at the fact that the New York Times is being hosted by their own petard on stuff like this, I'm not going to deny anybody a laugh around the holiday season, but you can't have it both ways, right? You can't simultaneously say, look, the New York Times is getting rightfully roasted for having a, sort of accidental swastika. See, goes to show that they shouldn't be so hard on everyone else. And simultaneously say something like, well, it's no big deal that, Holocaust deniers are dining with the former president of the United States. You kind of have to pick one of those two reactions. And I would think that Trump Jr. would have the second reaction since it was his dad, but I won't speak for the man.
All right. Ian Samuel, obviously this happening on the week of Hanukkah, creating quite a buzz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy Festival of Lights. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.